Hello tubers, this is Kurt with Edibles and Exotics coming to you from sunny Mesa, Arizona. And today, I know I talk a lot about grow bags, so this is a 12-inch grow bag that I made. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to make them, what materials you need, and what equipment you need. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to talk a little bit about the pros and cons and exactly how to use them. So let's get started on how to make them. All right, guys, so this is the equipment I use. I got a Singer heavy-duty sewing machine. I have UV-resistant garden thread over here. This is the material I use, and I'll talk about that more in a little bit. I got a yardstick, wooden. You could use metal, whatever. I got a pencil sharpener. I have a white pencil for material. I have really good sewing scissors for cutting the material nice and straight. And then I got glasses that magnify everything so I could see when I'm threading the needle and stuff like that. That's basically all you're going to need there. Really cheap. If you got a sewing machine lying around, junky one that you don't use anymore, use it. When it comes to any sort of planting or homesteading or permaculture, you need to know how to sew. If you know how to sew, it'll save you a bunch of time, money, headaches, everything. So I definitely learn, if you don't know how to sew, I definitely learn how to do it. It's going to be a lifesaver. All right, guys. So this is the material I use. It's weed barrier. I used to get it for about 35 bucks on eBay. The roll is 1 yard, so 36 inches or 3 feet wide and 300 feet long. So it lasts quite a long time. But unfortunately, the same stuff on eBay is going for $50 now. So price almost doubled. But it's made by DeWitt, or DeWitt. It's a weed barrier, premium landscape fabric. And this is the economy version. It says for light, medium duty landscape use. This is what it looks like in a brand new roll. This is how much I have left of this roll. And I made hundreds of pots out of this. So you don't have to use this exact fabric. You could use old bed sheets, you could use old tablecloths, anything that you can cut up that's kind of square, that'll fit your needs, or rectangular, or whatever. Doesn't matter, as long as it's kind of a close-knit fabric. You want something tight, because if it's too loose, the dirt and everything is just going to pour through the holes, and you're going to be filling pots and making a mess. But you do need some sort of permeability for the water to drain out. So I'm going to show you right now how I make these pots. Super simple. If you got free time or whatever at night, you watch the news or sitcoms or whatever you watch, just plop down in front of the TV, get your setup going and start sewing away. And in no time, you'll have grow bags that are, in most instances, not all, but most, way better than plastic nursery pots. All right, guys, so the first step in making these, obviously roll out your fabric, whatever you're going to use. Make sure you got enough room for the yardstick here. So this being 3 feet wide, I'm going to do everything that's, all my bags width-wise are going to be divisible by 36. So we could do 18 inches. So split this in half, and that'll be one panel for each side of the bag. Or we can go down to 12 inches and do 12, 24, and then we'll have 3 panels. Or we can go down to 9 inches and we could do 9, 18, 27, and then we have 4 panels. Or we can go down to 6 inches and we could do 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, and then we'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We'll have 6 going across. Now, the bags themselves, if you're doing it divisible by 36 like I am, because my cloth is 3 feet, 36 inches wide, you could do whatever length you want. So you could do squares. You could make it 6 inches around, but you could do a foot or 2 feet, whatever you want. If you have plants that have a long taproot, it's recommended to do a longer pot. So you could do, like I said, a 12-inch pot that's, instead of only being 12 inches tall, it could be 2 feet tall. So you have a long, skinny bag. It's really up to you. You could also do a giant grow bag if you want. You could do a 3-foot section going across, and you could do 4 panels, because it takes 4 panels to make 1 pot. But that's going to give you a monstrous bag. So I don't really have anything that I grow that big, so I don't really have any use for it. I have made them and used them, but it's not really useful to me. But whatever you guys need, you can make. So let's get started on measuring this. We're going to do a 12-inch square grow bag. So we're going to need 4 panels to make the bag. So we got to measure this out at every 12 inches. So 12 and 24, that's going to give us 3 panels. Then we're going to have to do another row to get 1 more panel. So we'll have some material left over. So let's get started on that right now. There's 12 inches. There's 24. We're going to measure it here. We're going to go up 12 inches and another 12. And we're going to do the same on this side. So we're going to go 12 inches up, just right here. And we're going to do another 12, just right here. And then we're going to measure across. So we're going to do 12 right here, 24. And now we're going to draw out a grid. So we need to draw, right here. Let's draw this one. All right. Straight across so we know where to cut. We're going to do another one here. This is our 12-inch mark. All right. Now we're going to do 2 more. So here's our 12 inches this way. We're just drawing a grid. So we got 12 here. And 12 here. All right. So this is 4 panels to make this. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4. These other 2 are going to be leftovers. So if you wanted to do the math, you could figure out how many bags you have to make so you don't have any leftovers, which is helpful. So now we're going to cut this right along these lines. There's 1 cut. There's 2 cuts. We'll lay this one on top of this one. Doesn't matter if they get dirty. They're going to be filled with dirt anyway. You get footprints on them or hair or dirt, whatever. It doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. All right, we're going to line these up as best we can. Again, this doesn't have to be perfect because this isn't going to be anything fancy. They're just getting filled with dirt and plants. All right. There's 1. And there's 2. All right. So we got our 6 panels. We don't need these 2. So we're going to put those aside for now. Here's our 4 panels. So if you follow me over to the sewing machine, I'm going to show you the exact way to sew these up. All right, guys, so we're all set up here. We got our 4 panels. What I usually do is I try to line up the corner, and then I stab the needle through, all right, just to hold it in place. Then I line up the other end. You don't have to worry about the extra here hanging down. It's not a big deal. And we drop our foot down, sew a little bit, back it up, and we just feed it through. And we reverse it at the end, lift it up, pull it out, snip our thread, flip it back over to the back here. So we got one side sewn up, right like that, 4 panels, one side. Gonna move on to the other side here. We're gonna do the same thing. We just gotta make sure that we're not gonna miss any of these. So move in just a little bit, drop our foot down, reverse, And we sew our other side. Back it up, and we're done. Needle's up, we can pull it out, snip our thread, feed it around the back. All right, so now we got the 4 panels. They're sewn one side and the other. You got to make sure if you're doing these not square like this, if they're going to be tall, make sure you sew. Your first 2 sew lines are going to be on your long sides, not the short side. Now we're going to take this and we're going to inside it out like that. So we're going to do 2 panels on the back side, 2 panels on the front side. We're going to line this seam up here. This is important. So you want these 2 seams just like that lined up. And then we're going to do the bottom stitch. Okay, that's the same thing. Put it in reverse, sew it back, feed it through. And then reverse it at the end. Bring your needle up, lift your foot up, snip it. All right, so we got a seam here, a seam on the back side, and a seam here. Now we're going to pull this guy like this. So it looks like a little diamond. All right, just pull the sides. So you got your 4 seams lined up. And we're going to have to sew these little wings. And what I usually do is, you don't have to measure, you just eyeball it, but I do about, so if you divided this into thirds, you'd have 1/3, 2/3. So I usually sew right around the 1/3. All right, so you're just going to sew a stitch line straight across here. That's going to sew your wing down. So drop the foot, reverse it, feed it through, reverse it, bring your needle up, flip the foot up, pull it through, flip the thread around the back. Okay, so we have 1 wing sewn right here, about 1/3 of the way of this length. We're going to do the same to the other side. So just grab it, flip it around. You got your wing. Figure out where about 1/3 is. Doesn't have to be exact. It don't matter. All right, reverse it. Feed it through. Reverse it. Flip the needles up. Lift your foot. Pull it through. Snip. Now you can go on. You see there's a lot of loose ends here. If you want to, you can trim them because the roots will get caught around that as they grow. So just trim some of those off. All right. So they're not hanging everywhere. All right, they're all pretty trimmed up. Now the next step, we're going to take this bag and we're going to inside it out. So just stick your hand in there, hold the little wings down, make a fist, pull it through. Okay. Get your hand in there and straighten it out. So that's the beginning of your grow bag right there. See that? All right. So the next step here is going to be the sew to top. And this is the final step. This is easy. So all you're going to do is you're going to fold one of these seams over and you're going to roll it down. See, this side's longer than this side. So we gotta roll this side down enough to get a seam here. So we're going to roll this guy down. All right. Got about 3/4 of an inch there. Both pieces are tucked under. So we're going to stick this in here. And I always start at the seam just to get it straight. Drop your foot down, reverse it, and start sewing. I roll it over as I go. So I try to keep an even seam right here, around 3/4 of an inch. Get this nice and straight as you're going. So we're sewing all the way around. This is where we started. We're going to reverse it again. And that's it. Our stitching is done. We'll bring the needle up, bring the foot up. We're going to snip this guy. Oop. And it looks like it got bunched up somewhere. All right. So that's it, guys. That's how you make a grow bag. You trim these little threads off here. And this is a grow bag. Started out with 12-inch panels. So now we are, let's get the sewing machine out of the way so we can measure here. We're about 8 inches tall. And we're about somewhere about 7 to 8 inches wide here. And you can see that took me all of maybe 10 minutes to make with the filming. If I didn't film this, I probably could have got in this time 4 of these done. So this guy's ready for dirt, ready to be used. All right, guys. So I want to talk a little bit about the pros and cons of grow bags. There's a lot of pros, very little cons. First off, they're nearly impossible to overwater. They drain water right through the sides, right through the bottom, everywhere. Since they're permeable to water, they also allow air to get into the roots. So normally when it comes to root rot's usually caused by an anaerobic condition, meaning lack of oxygen. That's what roots really start rotting when they're cold. They're sitting in zero air or close to zero air, and they're just wet. That's when pathogens just really decimate the roots and wind up killing your plants, you know, that you probably paid a lot of money for. Another good thing is there is almost zero salt buildup. So here in Mesa, we have very salty water. It's city water. It's very salty, not meaning like salt seawater or table salt, but it's very high in minerals. And if you allow that to completely fill up your pot and evaporate, all that salt's left behind, and it blocks your plants from absorbing nutrients and water. So you'll wind up getting salt burn. So when you use a grow bag, when you water it, all the water runs out the sides and the bottom, and it flushes the dirt. So it's almost like completely flushing the soil almost every time you water. It'll allow that salt to dissolve and wash out, so you won't get that salt buildup. It acts as a swamp cooler in the summer, which is kind of cool. So, you know, as water evaporates out of something, it takes the heat energy out with it. So I wouldn't recommend putting these in direct sunlight unless you group a whole bunch of them together. But you know, in the winter it's okay, but in the summer you want to, just like any other potted plant, you want to keep it out of the sun. But like I said, the water evaporates out of it and it takes the heat energy, so it keeps the roots cool. Most plant roots don't like temperatures above 85 degrees. So if temperatures for the roots start getting above 85, even for cactuses, they're going to start to suffer. And then also in the winter, you know, you got that airflow going through and everything. And, you know, here it doesn't get very cold. You know, I'm talking about subtropical Mesa, Arizona weather. So it doesn't really get very cold. So it'll actually allow warmer air into the root zone and keep it warmer in the winter. And you can move them into the sun in the winter too, and it'll act like kind of like a greenhouse. And but it'll maintain that temperature. It shouldn't get above 85 degrees. Let's see, what else do we have here? They're lightweight. So, you know, people get ceramic pots, and they kind of work the same as a grow bag almost. You know, they allow water to drain out of the sides, and they kind of cool the soil and everything. But they're kind of heavy, you know, especially if you have a big one. Ceramic pots, sometimes plastic pots could actually get heavy because they hold so much water, especially in the summer when you're watering like crazy. They get pretty heavy. So with the grow bags, they're really lightweight. I mean, they weigh next to nothing, especially with no dirt in them. They're really low cost to make. So guys, if you have a lot of plants, you know, let's say you're doing what I do, and you're growing plants, or either giving them away or selling them, or you just love plants and you got a ton of plants, nursery pots are expensive. You know, I'm not talking the small ones off of Amazon. I'm talking, you know, 1 gallon, 3 gallon, 5 gallon, 15, all these bigger pots. You know, some of these pots, you only get 2 or 3 pots, and it's going to cost you $25. Whereas if you make them yourself, you know, if you have all the equipment laying around, the sewing machine and thread and the material, you know, it costs you next to nothing. You know, especially once you get a big roll of material, or if you're even recycling tablecloths or bed sheets or t-shirts or whatever it may be, you know, you can make a ton of pots for pennies. So that's another really good thing. Let's see. You don't need to unpot the plants when you're going to plant them in the ground. What I use, even the bed sheets and tablecloths, that material, most plant roots can grow through that stuff no problem at all. So you know, if you buy a plant from me or you buy a plant from someone else and it's in a grow bag, you don't have to do anything to plant that plant. You don't have to disturb the roots or anything. You don't have to cut the bag off, nothing. You take that bag, you dig your hole, you prepare the ground like you're supposed to, you plop it in there, you water it, and you're good. And still being in a bag, it's going to hold some of that moisture. So when it's in the ground, you know, you need to water the root ball of the plant. Well, you know where the root ball is because it's in that bag. So you can concentrate most of your watering there and then water a little bit so that the roots see moisture outside the bag and grow through the bag and establish the plant. So you're going to save water that way. Let's see, what else do we have here? You could set up an auto watering system. So you could do it with regular nursery pots too, but it doesn't work as good because you don't have, especially in the summer, you don't have that surface area to evaporate the water. So it's not going to pull the water through as good. So if you look on YouTube or Google, you'll find automated plant watering systems. It's for a grow bag. Basically, you're gonna get a tray, maybe 3-4 inches deep. You're gonna put your grow bags in there. You're gonna surround them by small stones, and then you just fill the bottom of the tray up with water, and that dirt will wick the water up into the pot, and as it evaporates through capillary action, it's going to pull more water in. So you're going to constantly have water going in. But with a system like that, you do need to change the water, and you got to be careful of mosquitoes. You don't want to breed mosquitoes and have a mosquito farm. They also sell auto watering for those, so you could hook a hose up to it. It's got a little float, and it maintains the water level at whatever you set it at. So another pro with grow bags is storage. So I'm sure you've seen a lot of guys, they got these piles and piles and piles of plastic nursery pots. With the grow bags, it's not an issue. You could just scrunch them up. You could put them in an old pillowcase. You could put them in a plastic bag. You could put them in a tote, a bin. You could shove them into a drawer. They fit everywhere, you know, and they never have to be rinsed out. You see people say, oh, I washed them in the washing machine. Don't do that. You're going to ruin your washing machine. Just the material, it's actually pretty flimsy when you first make them, but after you use them, it starts to harden up and hold its shape. So I wouldn't recommend washing them. I mean, if you want to, you could hose them out. It's completely unnecessary, though. Just, you know, unless you have some sort of issue with, you know, a fungus or a mold or something, then yeah, you could put them in a bucket with, you know, a couple drops of bleach or something, let them soak, and then just rinse them out really good, and you should be good to go. But like I said, the storage is great. It takes up absolutely no space. You can make thousands of these and probably fit them into 2 or 3 pillowcases. If you only make, you know, a handful, maybe 100 or whatever, you just roll them up and you stick them in a plastic bag or a brown paper bag or something, put them on the shelf, and you're set. You just pull them out whenever you need them. Or you could even sew up a big grow bag. I do that sometimes. I keep a larger grow bag, and I just shove all my smaller ones in there and put them on the shelf, and they're happy, and they store great, and they're super lightweight. All right. So the cons, all right, there's very few, like I said. So one of the big ones is if you're growing your plants constantly in grow bags, they are going to need to be fertilized, because when you wash out the salts, when you water, you're also washing out the fertilizer. If you use a time-release fertilizer, that's fine. If you use a temperature-release fertilizer, that's fine. You can water it with Miracle Grow. But anything you put in there, it's going to get washed out. So, you know, normally a potted plant, you might fertilize every 2-3 months or so, let's say. With a grow bag, you're probably going to have to do it twice as often. It's just going to be up to you and your plant. You guys are going to have to talk with each other and figure it out. Other con, they need more water in summer. Since you got a lot more evaporation, you're going to need to water them a lot more often. So if you have a nursery pot, a plastic nursery pot, that's going to hold water, let's say when it's 112 degrees here. If it's sitting in the shade, just ambient air temperature, big leafy plant, you're going to water that, you know, maybe once a day. With a grow bag, you'd probably be okay with once a day too. You might want to keep an eye on it though, because you may need to water it in the morning as well, or in the afternoon. I don't, you know, whatever your schedule permits, but you got to keep an eye on them. You know, look for droopy leaves, and you know, whenever the plant's telling you, hey, you know, I need water, So this is kind of a pro and a con. So the next one, grow bags, they air prune the roots. So unless you have it up on a rack, it's not going to so much air prune the roots on the bottom of the bag, but on the side of the bag it will. So what air pruning does is when the root tips get to the edge of the bag, they dry out. And that doesn't kill the root, but it stops the tip from growing. And that tells the plant, hey, I've reached a dry area. Let's put more roots out into the damp area. So you're going to wind up with a plant that has in the bag, you know, the bag's going to be full of roots, thousands and thousands of roots. So instead of just one root, you know, with a bunch of little ones coming off it, you're going to have thousands. So it's going to be a very well-established plant when you're ready to plant it. The con on that is if it's a taproot, like I said, it's not going to air prune the bottom unless you put it up on a rack and allow that bottom to dry out too. But you got to be very careful with that. You know, you don't want the taproot to dry out and shrivel all the way up. So taproots are a little bit tricky, but like I said, you can make the bag a little bit deeper, you know, to accommodate for the taproot. So normally when you grow in plastic nursery pots, the roots hit the side of the pot and they see that as a barrier. So they start circling. They call it root bound. And, you know, they'll circle every which way, but they're trying to get out of that pot. They're looking, they're struggling. So you wind up with this pot of tangled root mess. And the roots on most trees mirror what's above ground. So if you have a 3 foot tall, 3 foot wide tree, your tree wants to be at least that size underground, maybe even bigger. So if you got a 3 foot by 3 foot tree and you have it in, like, let's say a 10, 15 gallon pot, that's not very big. You know, your tree is going to want a huge pot to stay healthy. So once those roots start tangling like that, winding around, they start to swell up and it kind of stunts them. Instead of being long and skinny and reaching out for nutrients, they get kind of fat. And once that happens, it's never gonna heal itself. It's never gonna grow right. You're always gonna have these weird, dwarfy, bonsai type roots. So think of an Asian lady where they bind their feet together, you know, to fit in those little shoes. Well, if you take those shoes off their feet, their bones are so deformed, without major reconstructive surgery, they're never going to go back to normal. So if she takes her foot out of that shoe, that's what her foot is going to look like, all rolled over on itself. And it's the same with plant roots. So the air pruning, it's a very, very big, real thing. It's very, very beneficial for when you're planting. The tree is ready to explode with growth. So that's it, guys. I hope you liked the video. If you have any questions or comments, if you need to know where I got my material, what I recommend, just hit me up in the comments section on the bottom and let me know, you know, if there's anything else you guys want videos on. You know, one thing I'd like to add too at the end of this video is a lot of people always ask, why don't you put handles on your grow bags? Well, the handles, the material I use, it holds up well. It's very tear resistant. But if you put handles on it, you do have to wrap the handles all the way around the bottom of the bag to support the bag. And I think by doing that, it really moves the dirt around inside the bag. And I just don't see it being too good for the roots. So these bags, they're so light. You know, if you have to move it and you do, like, let's say a giant bag, a 3 foot by 3 foot, and you have to move it, just let it dry out a little bit. And then it should weigh next to nothing, you know, unless you fill it with rocks and stuff, which you don't need to do that either. You don't need to put rocks in the bag or sand or anything like that. Just a good potting mix. Yeah, so just let it dry out. It should be lightweight enough. But the smaller bags, even the ones that I make that are 18 by 18, soaking wet, my 7-year-old could pick those up no problem and move them around. So I don't really see the need for handles. It's just an added step, and it's not really necessary. You just pick it up with 2 hands and you're ready to go.